And welcome back to Racing Rundown. This is sort of going along the lines of our Pegasus content here on Racing Rundown, but this isn't really Pegasus related that much. We're doing a little bit of a fun thing, as you can tell by the title of this episode. We're doing sort of a racing fantasy draft, and that is involving just basically taking horses from every single division and putting together or our take on the best stable with the horses that we have available. So the list that we have is very extensive, as you can see from my screen recording right now. As I'm on this right now, it's very there's a lot of horses that we have to choose from, way more than are probably necessary, but it's better to have more than less. So I'm joined by Eric for this, but we're also joined by our friend Hailey, who I don't know, I think it's been a few years since you've been on Racing Rundown, so welcome back, but it's great to have both of you in here for a little bit of fun that we're going to have.
I was on Racing Rundown a couple years ago, but I was incognito, so most people might not remember me being on, but...
Yeah, well, so we'll get started now. So we predetermined the order of the draft that we have. So Hailey's going to be going first, then I will be second, and Eric will be third, and then from there we're going to go in snake order. So then it's reversed: Eric, me, Hailey, and through that, and then we're going to have 30. Everyone's going to pick 30 horses. Really, the only ground rule for this is. You know, we're not setting a limit specifically on who takes what horses. It's just 30 horses that you think are the best. That being said, we did throw in one limitation. You're limited to 15 dirt routers. So you don't have to take 15, but that's the most you can take. So just because we do have a lot more dirt routers on here, as you can see from this. So we have all those horses in there. Again, 3-year-olds, very extensive. Older horses, and I'm scrolling a little bit too fast, but I apologize for that. So that's where we are, and I'll turn it back to Hailey so you can get started with who your first pick is going to be in this draft. And then we say we have a minute, but the three of us pretty much have an idea of where we're going. So this isn't going to be like a super long time between picks draft. So Hailey, you're all set. Go whenever you're ready.
So the first horse I'm going to take here is Game Time, mainly because I like the connections behind this horse, and I need to venture a little more into the turf world. So Game Time is my first pick.
All right, Hailey is in for Game Time. I'm going to select with my first pick in this. I'm going to take Arabian Night on the Kentucky Derby Trail. He's running this weekend in the Southwest, and I'll explain the point system more at the end of this, and I'm currently scrolling through trying to find Arabian Night. Probably shouldn't do this on this aspect, but I'm going to be going with Arabian Night in this, with my first pick in this draft. So Hailey's in for Game Time. I'm in for Arabian Night. Eric, your pick is up next.
And with my first of two straight picks, I'll be going with Taba. I think it's pretty straightforward. He's going to run in a lot of big races throughout the year, so that'll help me once you explain the point system, Jack. Obviously, that'll make a bit more sense, but Taba to me is pretty straightforward with my first pick. And my second pick will be Hong Kong Harry. First pick in round two, I should say. He's a horse who's going to get going a little later, but I'm sure he'll be in 5 or 6 straight races and dominate a pretty light Southern California turf scene.
All right, and with my number 2 pick, I just got to write down Hong Kong Harry there for Eric. With my number 2 pick, I'm going to take Hoosier Filly, who is looking to be the top filly on the Kentucky Oaks Trail right now, obviously already having 2 stakes wins under her belt, so we're going to get the first filly to come off the board in this draft is Hoosier Filly for me. And back to Hailey for picks number 6 and 7, excuse me.
So my second choice here is going to be a horse that Eric knows I'm not really the biggest fan of, but I think this year we might see a little more out of him, and that is Rich Strike, our long shot Derby winner from last year.
All right, Rich Strike in for Hailey, and then your second pick next.
In my second pick, I'm going to go to a horse that I think, you don't really see, He's not the most consistent thing in the world, but I like it when he gets a run in, and that is Gufo.
All right. In for Gufo. I'm going to go back to the Kentucky Derby Trail, and I'm going to take Victory Formation, who already won the Smarty Jones at Oaklawn, and then we are going to likely see him next time out in the Rebel. I think he's a very strong bet to hit the board, and that's another thing that we have to take into account with this is the way we're scoring this is horses get there's points for winning races and also running underneath board races. So even if Arabian Night, my other horse on this, is winning races, I can double dip in that aspect and get points for Victory Formation running second, or vice versa if Victory Formation turns out to be better than Arabian Night. And back to Eric for the next two picks.
So my next pick will be Julia Shining, second 3-year-old filly off the board. Just a horse I obviously like a lot, being a half to Malathot, and she's done everything right to this point in her career. I wouldn't be surprised if she suffers a loss or two, but I think all in all, she'll be getting those points underneath no matter what. And then first pick in round 4, I'm going to go with Having a Meltdown, who runs in the San Vicente upcoming. I just think that he's going to be a really good 3-year-old sprinter. Bob Baffert's not made any indication he'll stretch out, and he's dominated that division so far, and I don't see why he can't keep doing it.
And now we're going to move on to my next pick in this draft, and this is going to be the first older mare off the board. I'm going to take Clairiere, who is looking to re-inherit the crown as top older female away from her rival Malathot. Maybe she'll have some company from Nest also, but she finished off last year really well, and obviously is a very consistent horse. So we're going to take Clairiere off and go back to Hailey for Hailey's next two picks in this draft.
So I'm going to go to the fan favorite, who I think can route or sprint, and that is Cody's Wish for my 4th choice. And then for my 5th choice, I'm going to go to a horse that we will see probably run against Clairiere, and that is Nest.
All right, now we'll get back to my pick, and I'm going to go to my first older male of this group, and I'm going to take another, I'm going to double dip again with Bob Baffert and Amir Zidane, and I'm going to take Country Grammar, who will probably see at least run in the Dubai World Cup, and then we'll see where he runs after that, but I think that he's lined up very well for a Dubai World Cup effort, and then, like I said, we'll see what happens afterwards. And back to Eric for picks for his 5th and 6th pick of the draft.
I'm going to go on the Derby Trail, or really just 3-year-old colts, even more so here with my next two choices. And I'll start with Forte, who is still on the board. I figured at this point, kind of a no-brainer in my eyes to scoop him up, and he's going to keep winning races. I don't think there's going to be any regression from him. And then my next pick will be Extra Anejo, who is starting to work back from his injury last fall. And even if he doesn't make the Derby, I think he can be a really strong summer and fall type for Steve Asmussen.
And I'm going to take another one of those horses that probably isn't going to make the Derby, but is definitely going to have his say in races across the late spring into the summer and the fall, and that's Loggins, the runner-up from the Breeders' Futurity. Looks like potentially could be one of the top 3-year-olds. Unfortunately, we're not going to get to see him in the early part of the Kentucky Derby Trail, but at some point we'll get to see him run some strong races. So Loggins will be my pick in this. And I forgot to toss it back to Hailey for Hailey's next two picks, so you're up next.
I would say you're waiting for your cue, Jack. So I'm going to jump back into the turf world. I'm going to take Master of Foxhounds for my 6th pick. And then I'm going to jump over to our Pegasus field and go with the Baffert trainee of Defunded.
All right, and I'm gonna go to the turf, but I'm gonna go a different route. I'm gonna steal Warlike Goddess from Eric because Warlike Goddess is obviously super consistent. Don't know how many times she's gonna run this year, but she's usually a pretty big bet to run some strong races. And I think there's a chance we'll see her at least one more time against the males than we saw her last year. So when we get into the scoring system, Grade 3 races are obviously worth less than Grade 1s in our scoring, but Warlike Goddess likely will see at least one more Grade 1 than she did last year. So she's going to be my pick for this, and we'll go back to Eric for his next two picks.
And I'll go another very talented mare Good Night Olive, the Breeders' Cup filly mare sprint winner. Just ultra consistent. They're bringing her back. She won't have a busy campaign, but she can absolutely roll this division whenever she shows up. So even it's 4 races, pair of grade 1s, pair of grade 2s, she'll have done her job for me. So Good Night Olive. And then I'm going to go a horse I'm kind of reaching up for here in Motorious, who is going to run in the Clocker's Corner this weekend. But he is a very strong turf sprinter for Phil D'Amato. I think that they absolutely think they have a star turf sprinter on their hands, and obviously pick up some early points with a good win this weekend.
And we have some Europeans on this, so I'm going to reach into the well and get the first European off the board in here, and that's Rebels Romance, the Breeders' Cup Turf winner from last year. We've speculated about some races that he could run and whether or not he'll try the dirt, and that's why I'm taking him over some of the other maybe more talented Europeans. But again, I think that Rebels Romance will likely see some good races from him. We'll likely see him in the Middle East at some point. So really trying to bank on getting some of that Dubai form out of Rebels Romance. And we'll go back to Hailey for her next 2 picks on this.
So I'm going to jump back into the Bob Baffert barn here for Speedboat H, who is the very rare Baffert turf horse. So I'll be curious to see what he does with him this year. But the horse has been doing really well in California, so I like to see him at least take a little bit of that California turf money. And then I'm going to follow Jack's line here and go with another European, and that is Modern Games.
All right, Hailey's in for Modern Games, and I'm going to go back to the one-turn horses in this, and I'm going to pull the Breeders' Cup Sprint winner from last year, Elite Power. I'm not really too sure how good Elite Power is going to be this year, but he was very consistent in the races that he ran in last year, so I think we could see some nice, at the minimum, stakes placings from him and use him as kind of a board hitter type to manufacture some points that way. And we'll go back to Eric for his next 2 picks.
All right. I think now at this point I'm getting a little, feeling a little bit more risky, see where we can get things to connect. I'll start with Ginobili, who won so nicely at Oaklawn very recently, and this is hopefully a horse who just is going to ship to the Middle East and run a good race or 2, and that'll be what he does for me, because I don't know if he can be effective the entire year, but I can certainly count on him, I feel like, in the very near future. And then I'll also take a horse kind of in the same area right now, at least location-wise, and that's Secret Oath down in Arkansas. Of course, Kentucky Oaks runner last year. She's just going to be a points getter because she always brings her race. And as long as she's hits a few good spots, wins a few places in a few, she'll be a solid pickup.
And now I'm going to move on to who's going to be my next pick. I'm going to take another female turf horse, and that's an Italian who may be champion turf female, but she was so consistent in all of her races that she ran in last year. So I'm going to pull an Italian off the board now, and I just realized that I misspelled an Italian writing on the spreadsheet, so exclude my first grade spelling there. And I'll go back to Hailey for your next 2 picks off the board.
So I'm going to jump in and go and take K-Rock as my 10th pick. And then I'm going to jump down and go to Lady Spite Sphere for my 11th pick.
All right, Lady Spite Sphere off for Hailey, and as soon as I finish writing this in, I will go with my next pick, and my next pick is going to be another horse off the older horse list, which we haven't really pulled too many horses off of the older horse group yet, but I'm going to grab I'm going to grab Charge It whenever we get him back there. This is a bit of a risky pick, but I think Charge It has a lot of talent, and it's just a matter of once we get him back to the racetrack, I think he'll run some strong races. So I'm going to pull Charge It off the board now with my 11th pick in this draft. And we'll go back to Eric for Eric's next 2 picks.
So next I will go with Blazing Sevens, Champagne winner from last year. He's a horse who is going to take, it seems like he's taking a while to get back, but by all indications, he'll be coming back soon. And I just think he's going to get a lot better with age. So I feel pretty confident rolling with that choice. And then I'm also going to go off the board here, Jack. So hopefully you can track this horse down. Flying Fortress, another kind of slightly off the beaten path pick. This filly actually, or I guess she's a mare now, running some really good races lately. And I think that she's primed for a big 6-year-old campaign or 5-year-old campaign. So she'll be a little bit of a wild card pick there, Flying Fortress.
And now I'm going to take another horse that I think is going to run in a lot of races and put up some nice placings. So I don't know how many grade ones he'll run, and he's running in the Pegasus, but I'm going to grab Skippy Longstocking, who won 2 graded stakes last year, and his another one that's just been consistent. So I'm going to grab Skippy Longstocking right here, and I'll toss it back to Hailey for your next 2 picks.
I'm also going to go straight to the Pegasus and take White of Barrio, who I think will run a good race, given that the Pegasus is at Gulfstream. We tend to see a good performance out of him there. And then I'm going to go into the fillies and take And Tell Me No Lies, the Arrogate filly there.
And Tell Me No Lies for Hailey. Let me just, I can't spell right now, so please, if you're listening to... please do forgive me for my lack of spelling ability there. I'm going to go to another look in this race, and I'm going to pull Laurel River off the board for Bob Baffert, another Baffert horse that I'm pulling off. I don't know when he's going to get back, but he'll probably, have his way in most of those one-turn races out in California, which do have some nice grades attached to them. So I'm going to pull him down here. Again, kind of one of those risky, we'll see what happens picks, but I think if he turns in a decent enough campaign like he did last year, could produce some good points for me. And now we'll toss it back to Eric for Eric's next choices in this draft, which will be your 13th and then the beginning of the 14th round of the draft.
So with my pick here in the 13th round, I'm going to go with Society because I think that she's going to come back better than ever into her 4-year-old campaign, finished off the year, obviously on a bad note, and hasn't really worked back since. But I think there's still plenty of good talent there with Society. Cotillion was too good of a race to ignore. After that, I will go Flash with Mischief, another kind of quicker points grab on this aspect because he runs this weekend. But I think he can pick up stakes wins. I don't know if they'll ever reach the point where grade ones will matter, and I'll be well off on that front. But either way, I think that he's a horse who's going to accumulate a lot of good points.
And now we're going to move on to my next pick of the draft, and I'm going to grab Echo Zulu, the one-time Kentucky Oaks favorite in 2021's Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies winner. She hasn't been pulled off the board yet. Another one who, we didn't see her for a large portion last year, but she ran such a good race behind Goodnight Olive and was so consistent beforehand. So she's going to be my 14th pick in the draft, and we'll go back to Hailey for numbers 14 and 15 for you.
Okay, the next one I'm going to go with is a horse that I think runs super consistently, but might not always win, but I'd like to see him run back in California, maybe pick up a few graded wins, and that is Stiletto Boy. Right. Then the next one I'm going to go for is one that we've only seen run once, but he's already been challenged, and I want to see what he does again, and that is Faustin.
Faustin for Hailey, and now I'm going to move on to my next pick, and I'm going to grab another European right now. I'm going to take Kyprios, the Gold Cup, Goodwood Cup, and won a bunch of Group 1s last year as the supreme stayer in Europe. And consistency comes with him all the time, and I think it's well worth taking him at this time.
Up next, I'll go with, I don't think he's been taken. Someone can cut me off if he has, but Auguste Rodin. Very good upcoming 3-year-old. A horse who obviously they have to kind of prove a little bit more. Jackie's been taking more older horses in Europe, and I think that's totally a much more safe choice because if he was saying he won't train on next year. But I'm going to stick with those guns and feel a little bit confident in me there. And next, I'll go with Old Reliable Channel Maker because how can you not like Channel Maker? A horse who I feel like it's going to be kind of make or break this first start of the year, but if he runs well enough, he'll be around, he'll run in a ton of races.
And I'm going to go and grab Caravel, the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint winner. She's another one. I know she's going over to Royal Ascot this year, but she's another one who runs a lot. And yeah, I would think even if the Royal Ascot experiment doesn't go well, she'll continue on and run in some of those, listed black type, even though grade 3 turf sprints, and she was really capable of holding her own in those races. So definitely one of those big points pickup horses. So she'll be my 16th pick off the board, and we'll go back to Hailey for Hailey's next 2.
So I'm going to go with a horse that I kind of forgot existed until a little bit back, but has always been super consistent out in California, and that is Dicey Mochara. And then my next one I'm going to go with will be Cathlino.
Could you repeat this? Sorry, Hailey, I didn't hear it. Could you repeat that?
Cathlino.
Okay, thank you. And now we are going to move on to my next pick, and I am going to take City Man, the maybe Pegasus Turf favorite in here, but City Man is a very consistent horse, and I think even if the Pegasus, doesn't go super well for him, he'll go back up to New York. In worst case scenario, he'll run and pick up some state bred races. But even if he doesn't pick up a bunch of wins in state, and even if he's a little bit better, runs in grade 2, grade 3 races, I think that City Man's that kind of horse that can earn points for us. And I really should have explained the point system that we're doing beforehand, but we'll do that afterwards. And I'll go back to Eric for your next 2 picks in this draft.
So next I will go with the filly who rounded off her year with a grade 1 victory. That's Fina Romantica. The few turf females I've chosen at this point, a little longer. This one I trust can cut back just a little bit in front of those mile and an 8 types and do just fine. So Chad Brown's always kind of hit or miss how often he's going to run his horses, but once again, you got to kind of start taking some risks the later you get into this, and he's still a grade 1 winner, and so that'll carry her a long way. After that, I'll go West Willpower, who closed off 2022 really well. Was second in the Clark on the Fed. He's just back on the work tab now at Fairgrounds, so kind of a similar path, if not a little easier. But I think he's finding out how to be a racehorse again.
And now I'm going to go back to the Kentucky Derby Trail, which I haven't taken a horse on the Kentucky Derby Trail, I think, since I grabbed Victory Formation. And I'm going to take Instant Coffee out after his run last weekend in Lecomte. This is a horse that I think will do plenty of running on the Kentucky Derby Trail. And even if he doesn't, run well in the Kentucky Derby, I think he's going to run well in his next 2 races down in New Orleans. Even if, like I said, even if those aren't wins, definitely pick up some good placings, earn us points, and obviously will get himself into the Kentucky Derby, and then we'll see what he does post-Kentucky Derby. But Instant Coffee is my 18th pick in this draft, and we'll go back to Hailey for her next 2 choices.
So I'm going to go back to the turf, or a horse that has run on the turf, but they did try on the dirt, and that is Pride of the Nile. And then I'm going to go with the Iowa-bred Tyler's Tribe.
Right, Tyler's Tribe and Pride of the Nile. I flipped the order of those 2 horses. But we'll go on now to my next pick, and I'm going to grab the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies winner, Wonder Wheel, who hasn't been pulled down yet. And I understand why, because she didn't really run a great year last year, but maybe she comes back and can run some decent races. We'll see her in a few weeks in the Suncoast. So kind of a risky pick, but I think you're getting a dual grade 1, or I'm getting a dual grade 1 winner almost 2/3 of the way through the draft. So we'll see what this happens with her, and we'll go back to Eric for your next 2 choices.
My next choice will be Slow Down Andy. I hope he's coming back soon. Obviously, an injury kept him out of the Malibu, so that's not very awesome. But I think no matter what, he's still a really good horse. He finished off the year so nicely last year that it makes a lot of sense to go with him and have him here. He can be versatile too. Any surface is something that he can handle. Right after that, I am going to take a 3-year-old filly. I'm going to go with Feza. I don't know. It's almost like I can't count Bob Baffert out, right? And even then, if she runs okay on the Oaks Trail, and even if that isn't the goal, there's still races like the Summertime Oaks and the Torrey Pines down the road. So hopefully kind of collect those races. It's not just a ton of West Coast 3-year-old fillies that we've taken to this point.
And I'm going to take a horse that did a lot of running last year in kind of marathon type races, and I'm going to hope that that trend continues. And I'm going to take Haywood's Beach for John Sadler. Maybe we'll work in a Sadler special with him, but definitely one that I think will run in a lot of races. Maybe look to a race like the Brooklyn that could be something that he could win. But Haywood's Beach is my next pick off the board, and we'll go back to Hailey for your next 2 choices.
My next 2 choices just happen to run 1-2 against each other in their last start, and that will be Newgate and Reincarnate.
Newgate and Reincarnate, two more Kentucky Derby trail horses off the board for Hailey. And now I'm going to move on to my next choice in this race, and I'm going to grab Gunite, Steve Asmussen's nice sprinter. Did some, after coming back from injury, did some nice running, was grade 1 place. He's entered this weekend at Oaklawn. I have him in the King Cotton, and I think that we'll see some nice races from him this year. So Gunite's my 21st pick. Back to Eric for your next two choices.
Up next, I'm going to go Two Phils, kind of keeping up the Derby trail that I picked up a few picks ago. Obviously, he skipped it, but horse I really like, ran very well in the Lecomte, and I think that he's got a good chance to carry on that form moving into the rest of the preps and maybe even further down in the year. Right after that, I'm going to go with an old favorite of mine because I feel kind of like I was disrespecting him if I didn't go with him, even though he's had a rough go of it. Simplification. But, if he can run second and third a bunch, then he'll be just fine. So I really am just picking him because I love him, but I don't know if he can get back to the form he was in on the Derby Trail last year.
I'm going to go back to Europe for my next pick, and I'm going to grab the Derby winner from last year, Desert Crown. I have a lot of high expectations for him. It looks like we're not going to see him until the Prince of Wales is, but I think even if he runs 4 times this year, I think runs that, goes to the King George, even if it's 3 times, runs in the Arc, and that's it. I think that has a good chance to pull out 3 Group 1 wins, and we're scoring Group 1s the same as we're scoring Grade 1s here, so that's going to be my choice with Desert Crown, and I'll go back to Hailey for your next 2 choices.
So my next horse is going to be Moira, who we last saw out in the filly and mare turf at Breeders' Cup, and then I'm going to follow her out with a horse who we didn't really see run that well his last few starts out, but Some Like It Hot Brown.
Some Like It Hot Brown next off the board for Hailey. Just give me a moment to write this down, and then I will get to my next choice in this race, and I'm going to have to just briefly take a scroll back up through the list to see who to settle on who I'm going to go with. And I'm going to pull Cossack off the board, another turf sprinter. We'll probably see him go overseas again, and if he can run similar to the way he did before that, the Jaipur's a race that's got his name written all over it. He's going to be my 23rd choice off the board. Back to Eric for your next 2 choices.
My next choice will be Bluebirds Over. He's a really nice emerging turf 3-year-old for Safi Joseph, and he's expected to run pretty soon down in Florida, so I think he can be decent. And I think the chance he might help on the Derby Trail at some point, which wouldn't be my favorite thing, but I think that he's a nice horse who's taking the right steps forward. After that, I'm going to go Mary Quite Contrary. She obviously runs this weekend, but that kind of plays into the choice, but also I think she's proven to be consistent, and as long as she can stay in decent form, she can help pick up a lot of points in this exercise.
And now we're going to move on to who my next choice is going to be, and I'm going to go back to the turf route, and I'm going to take Beyond Brilliant. I'm not sure where he is or if he's coming back this year, but I'm going to take Beyond Brilliant because he was another one that was that type of consistency in the California shorter turf races. So Beyond Brilliant is going to be my next choice off the board here. And we'll go back to Hailey for Hailey's next 2 choices.
So I'm going to go back onto the Derby Trail here and take National Treasure. But then I'm going to take a horse that Eric, Jack, and I tend to have a little bit of a personal following towards, and who had just happened to get into the Pegasus turf, and that is One More Bid.
One More Bid off the board for Hailey. I'm going to just finish writing this, and I'm going to look just quickly to see who I'm going to take. And I'm going to grab, because I don't think anybody's grabbed her yet, I'm going to grab Wicked Halo, who kind of the same route as Echo Zulu. She did a little bit of working around some of the top competition level, but if she runs into some of those grade 2, grade 3 races, she's another one that is very consistent, likely will pick up points in those kind of races. So she's my next choice off the board. And we'll go back to Eric for your next 2 choices.
So I'm gonna get a little tricky now. I'm gonna go with Plot the Dots for my next choice. Horse who's rising up the ranks for Lynn Cash, who likes to circle his horses back. So I figured might as well go with a horse I know he's going to run a lot. So I'm gonna take him. He'll be my one because I feel like I would be cheating if I just picked a ton because they would just accumulate by running and running. and running. After that, I think I'll go with another filly, that filly being Charlie's Penny. I think she can stay consistent. She'll just pick up a lot of points throughout the year, win or lose. For instance, she's in at Sam Houston, but I don't know. Or not Sam Houston. She ran a few weeks ago. Point is, if she can stay consistent, Fairgrounds, Churchill, wherever, she'll be a points eater, which is all I need.
Excuse me just a moment. I'm counting up how many horses I have. So from there, I'm going to decide what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do something tricky because this was a horse that I threw on the list as one that we could choose from. But there's a lot of risk involved in this. But since I'm very confident that he's going to win the Pegasus, I'm going to grab Cyberknife. This is a, I'm getting him very late, but this is a home run play, because if he doesn't win the Pegasus, then I completely wasted a slot here. But I think he's going to win the Pegasus, and if he wins the Pegasus, he's going to get me the points for the Grade 1 win, and then, obviously we'll move on the end of the year. He's going to be dead weight, but it's a risky pick, but it's something that at 26 I think I can do with him. And we'll go back to Hailey for your next two choices.
I'm going to go with a horse that really only had a couple bad runs, and one of them will happen to be out of California, but that's the Richard Mandela trainee Sumter. And then I'm going to go over and take a horse who I'd like to see come back and run good this year, and that is Art Collector.
Art Collector, another horse off the board from the Pegasus. I am now going to move on, go back to Europe, and I'm going to take a horse that ended off 2022 with a very nice Group 1. I think she's got some nice races ahead of her this year, and that's going to be Lazoo, the Chivley Park winner for Ralph Beckett. Like I said, a filly who ended off the year with a nice Group 1. I think she's going to turn in some nice races this year. We'll see where she runs, but she's going to be my next choice in there, and I'll go back to Eric for your next two picks.
I'm going to go first off. I don't off the board as well. Once again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to go with the juvenile Phillies turf winner, Meditate. Training on really well, it seems, overseas. It seems like she's a horse who's doing all the right things, and it seems like a horse that Aidan O'Brien really likes a lot. So Meditate, and we'll stay on the turf. We'll go back to America and go along. Another horse who doesn't have any stakes experience, actually, but horse I think is kind of like my pick from quite a bit ago in Flying Fortress, is Broadway Bookie. He won a allowance race by like 6 lengths at Gulfstream a few weeks ago, going a mile and a half. So my hope is that she can jump into that division and be a little bit of a player.
And now we're going to move on to the next, or my next choice, which is my 28th pick. And after consulting the list just very briefly, I am going to take Queen Goddess, who, she's obviously my Pegasus pick, but I think even if she doesn't win the Pegasus, she'll go back out to California. There are some nice, graded stakes races. Likely the Gamely will be a target for her later in the year. Opportunity for her to pick up some nice points in this system. So she's going to be my 28th choice. I'll go back to Hailey for your choices, 29 and 30. Or yeah, 28 and 29. Sorry, I meant the spreadsheet's one off, so it's 29 and 30 in the numbering, but that's been confusing me the whole time. First time I made that mistake, so pat myself on the back.
I'm going to take our filly and mare turf winner, and that is Tuesday for my 28th pick. And then I'm going to jump over back to a horse a Curlin horse that we've only seen once, but I think we could see a lot more out of him, and that is Fort Warren.
Fort Warren for number 29 for Hailey, and I think I'm going to go back to Europe and take one more European, and that's Little Big Bear, one of Aidan O'Brien's 7 really good 3-year-olds. Eric pulled Augusta Rodin off early, so I'm going to pull the horse who is right now looking at the second choice for the 2,000 guineas, but even if he doesn't win the 2,000 guineas, he looks like to be a good miler, and if Augusta Rodin stretches out in trip, which I think he'll probably do, Little Big Bear will be a good horse to look at. We'll go back to Eric for your last two choices, actually.
So my first one is going to be a horse who just broke his maiden a few weeks ago at Gulfstream for Todd Pletcher, Cuvier, however we want to say that. He was a really strong winner that day, and my hope is that maybe he doesn't think he can put he stays at 110 and can be a big factor in those races, because we know that New York's done a really good job building up those races over the past few years. And then finally, I'll finish it off with Leave No Trace, a Grade 1 winner last year as well. But a horse who's just did a lot more than I would have expected, and it seems that Phil Surkey thinks she's on the right track. So I'll finish it off with a 3-year-old filly, despite that crop being pretty weak last year, with Leave No Trace.
I'm going to finish off with another older female, and I don't think she's been taken off the board, so kind of the same thing that Eric said. If someone's taken her, give me a shout. But I'm going to take Grade 1 winner from last year, Pauline's Pearl, with my last pick. She runs this weekend. In the Houston Ladies, I have Clariere. I'm going to take her stablemate, and I think it's very likely that Steve Asmussen's going to play dodgeball with these two throughout the year, so Pauline's Pearl is going to be my last pick in this draft. And we'll go back to Hailey for your final choice in the draft.
So my final choice here, I'm going to go with an Irish bred who's really only been off the board twice in his career, and that will be Nation's Pride.
Nation's Pride, the last pick off the board for this. So 30 horses that we have in total, and so the system that we devised for this is points allocated based on placement in stakes races, but also not exclusively stakes races. So Grade 1's horse wins, you get 50 points, 35 for a second place finish for one of your horses, and 20 for a third place finish. 40 points for a Grade 2 win, 25 points for a Grade 2 placing, or a Grade 2 second, and then 10 points for a Grade 2 third place finish. 30 points for a Grade 3 win, 18 points for a Grade 3 second, and 10 points for a Grade 3 third. Listed stakes, 25 points if you win that, 12 points for a second, and 7 points for a third, and then 20 points for a black type or state bred win. So I did, with a couple of my picks, factor in potential state bred races, 20 points to win that, 10 points for a second, 6 points for a third, and then a maiden or allowance race, 15 points for a win there, 8 points for a second, and 4 points for a third. So we'll update this over the course of the year, maybe in maybe in a couple of months. We'll do another thing of draft from as the year goes on. If there's horses that we didn't include on this because they're good maiden breakers, maybe we'll do this later, add 10 more choices to the barn. But right now, these are the 30 choices. I'll scroll back down one more time so you can get a look at the stables here. I think everybody did a good job balancing things out. Things aren't slanted too much in one direction. So I'm glad that we were able to put this together, and thank you guys for joining me for this.